Okay, folks, in this section, we'll see that what are the different types of VAT supplies and how each one is accounted for, and whether we charge VAT on some items or we do not charge VAT on certain supplies. So mainly it can be divided in two categories. First one is a taxable supply and second one is an exempt supply. So if we see the word taxable supply, it may sound that each one falling here would be subject to 5% VAT. But if we further have a deep look here, the taxable supplies are further subdivided in two categories. First one is standard rated supplies. Second one here is zero rated supplies. So standard rated at present in UAE is that it would be subject to 5% VAT, whereas zero rated is, of course, there will not be a VAT, but we will say that it is subject to VAT but at 0%. So technically speaking, if I am a buyer, I am not concerned with this, whether it is a zero rated supply or it is an exempt supply or anything else, as long as I do not pay VAT on that. But technically speaking, the zero rated supply is a taxable supply, which means it is subject to VAT but at zero rate. Now the exempt supplies are supplies which will not be subject to VAT. So there would absolutely no VAT be charged on these, and it is an exempt supply. Now you may wonder that the zero rate supply and exempt supply both does not put a burden of tax as far as the buyer is concerned, but for supplier it is altogether a different story. Why? Because if I am supplying exempt supplies here, the exempt supplies, if I am supplying, I cannot claim my input VAT. So which means that input VAT will not be claimed and it would become my expense. So in this scenario, if I'm supplying zero rated supplies, I will not charge my client any VAT, but still I would be able to claim my input VAT. So it means that being a supplier, if I fall under exempt supply category, I cannot claim my input VAT and actually my total cost will increase. So just take an example that here in UAE at present, a transportation sector, which include our taxis and also the services, are exempt supplies, but they are incurring fuel, they are incurring electricity and all such expenses. So anybody who is having at present a taxi service here in UAE, they cannot charge their client any output VAT because it is an exempt supply, and at the same time they cannot claim their input VAT. So actually speaking, whatever such companies buy, anything what they buy, in that case their the cost would be increased by 5%. So this thing is very important, that being exempt as far as VAT is concerned is a bad thing because my cost would be increased. So these are the two types of supplies which are well defined in UAE VAT law. Now let me just take this opportunity and introduce another type of supply which will not be included in taxable or exempt, but still we will have this with us. So it is actually an out of scope supplies. Now the out of scope supplies are such supplies where the place of supply is outside UAE. So take an example for the goods. So if I am supplying the goods and the seller is in UAE, its supplier is in China, and its client is, for example, is located in UK. Now this seller, the seller asks the supplier that please supply the goods directly from China to UK. So in this scenario, if it would be supplied directly from China to UK, in this case, this supply would be out of scope, which means it would not be subject to your output VAT, because the goods, when they were being supplied, they were located here in China and the place of supply was outside UAE, so it would be out of scope supplies. Now you may be wondering that if it is out of scope supply, as I mentioned here, can I claim my input VAT here? Yes, you can claim the input VAT on such out of scope supplies, as long as if the same supply you make in UAE, you would be able to claim your input VAT. So it's pretty simple. If it was a taxable supply in UAE and you are now supplying it in a manner in which it becomes out of scope supply, so still you can claim your input VAT. So I believe that these three things are clear to you now, and these are very, very important, because whether you are supplying a taxable supply, exempt supply, or an out of scope supply will actually be a deciding factor whether you can claim your input VAT or whether you should be charging your client your output VAT or you should not be charging it.